Today, we are very fortunate to have our not only donors, keynote speakers, as well as the SWE partners who are on this call. The 14 practitioners who are here, we are all working under extremely difficult situation today. All of us, we wish to be safe, our communities to be safe, and also our employees need to be safe. However, safe water is one of the most important aspects of what we do and work day and night for. Uh, it has been our great fortune that all of us could get together and start this program.
So, good morning and welcome everybody. We have with us the entire spectrum of small water enterprise practitioners who have been serving drinking water since last 25 to 30 years. And we are holding this webinar under the Project Seva. So, Project Seva is Sustainable Enterprises for Water and Health. It is an initiative of USAID working with all the SWE practitioners, especially in the urban space, to promote urban health and water. So with this, I would now invite Mr. Anand Rudra, Senior WASH Specialist at USAID, to address the panel. Anand Rudra, as we all know, has been working with USAID since last 30 years. His specialization is in urban health and water. He is not only supporting the India mission, but also the South Asia missions. Over to you, Anand.
Number one, congratulations to Safe Water Network for having organized this webinar event in a situation which is very appropriate, as the title mentions. Water being a key component of our lives. One of the backgrounds which I would like to share with all the participants is USAID has been there for the last over 70 years in India. We work with various ministries. Our key ministries are the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Urban, Ministry of Energy, Power, Agriculture, which is called SEVA, which is a Sustainable Enterprise for Small Water and Health. This basically is funded by my office. I am the project manager working closely with Ravi sir and Poonamji. The key component of this particular project, SEVA, is to support people such as who are on the webinar, people who are small water enterprises and who are willing to be small water enterprises, or people who have, graduated to other water sector issues. How we can basically strengthen this alliance. I think that is the main key that we are looking at through this project, number one. Number two, we are looking at this cohort of people, the people around us on this webinar, led by Safe Water Network, to play an advisory role to city corporations and governments to understand, make them understand that water is key. Everybody knows that. They are supposed to provide water to everybody, but there are things which they can, there are things which they cannot, which is the piped water thing. Now, when they are not able to provide water through piped water, we have to think of alternate solutions. When they are providing water through piped water, again, the issue is the water coming regularly? Is the quality very good? That's where I think the small water entrepreneurs like yourself and the people in the water sector like yourself matter. They matter for two reasons. They are fulfilling a gap which was supposed to be provided by the government. The second one is, I think they're providing the provision of safe access to drinking water, which is a right of services to every citizen. I basically feel that this webinar has the opportunity to bring together all our thoughts, The players are known. There are some players who are not known. We would like to basically bring together and offer Seva as a platform where you can basically think this as a family representing you and your advisory role to the city governments as we plan to expand this, as we plan to make this as an alternate opportunity for safe drinking water. Last but not the least, I would also like to mention that USAID works very closely with the government of India. USAID is a bilateral agency of the US government. We work with the Ministry of Housing and Urban, in which Swachh Bharat Mission is there, Amrut is there, Smart Cities is there. Our main partnership is with the Swachh Bharat Mission and the Amrut project. We report directly to the mission director, Vinod Kumar Jindal, and to Amrut director, Thara. So you can understand that it is just not us doing work at the ground level. We also show how these works in the ground level reflect policy discussions. It basically matters in actions that are national level, like the national flagship I mentioned. So overall, I just wanted to give a hint that all of you matter in this partnership. This is not just academic that we basically are running this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, but we look forward to everybody contributing to make this a success. Again, the 3 attributes I remind. The first is to basically expand the alliance. If there are 10 people today now, we want to expand that to 20 people. We want to expand that to 30 people. The second main objective of this alliance is to play the advisory role, technical, policy-wise and otherwise, so that the city governments basically and other small water enterprises understand how they can get into this business of providing alternate source of drinking water if the piped water does not reach household. Overall, I look forward to listening to this webinar. All the best to everybody, and once again, congratulations to the project team, Safe Water Network, who have pulled together this at times such, which I think is a great option. Thank you so much.
So a brief introduction to Dr. Ashok Kumar Jain. He's an advisor to NITI Aayog. He belongs to 1983 batch of IFS, Telangana cadre. He's presently working in NITI Aayog, supporting on rural development, drinking water sanitation, housing and sustainable goals. He has a MSc and MPhil in botany with a PhD in development studies. So over to you, Dr. Ashok Kumar Jain.
Thank you. Thank you, all the panelists. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this important webinar and the Safe Water Network and USAID, which you have organized today. In fact, yesterday, Ikshita spoke to me in the evening, and I had some meeting, but in fact, I requested the vice chairman that give me some 1 hour time so that I can join this webinar. Thank you so much once again. Thank you so much once again. Of course, I know the purpose of this webinar, where you are talking more of the safe drinking water supply to the cities in India. But I'll talk definitely on the subject which for which this webinar is organized. But I'll also talk in general about the water as such, because that's a resource which is, if it is available, then only we can think of providing the water, and which I'll be talking mostly because my cadre was erstwhile Andhra Pradesh. Later I got allotted after division of Andhra Pradesh to Telangana, and I had a lot of experience in the both states, worked as a Secretary Irrigation, then Director of Groundwater, then MD of Irrigation Development Corporation, etc. And in Government of India also, I have been working on the drinking water with the Ministry of Rural Development, with the drinking water and sanitation, etc. So I want to connect the overall scenario, and of course then finally come to the real issues of the drinking water. As you are aware that in the world around we have around only 2.5% of the fresh water, and balance 97.5% is saline water. And out of 2.5% is only about a 1% water which is usable, because balanced water is in the form of ice caps, or etc. etc. Now, as per the estimations, around 47% of the world population is likely to be water stressed by 2030, roughly it is said. That's why the Sustainable Development Goals And goal number 6 talks more on the water and sanitation. And since I was dealing with SDGs also, I was country focal person for SDGs, representing Government of India in the United Nations. So there used to be a lot of discussions on the drinking water to the population, both in cities, towns, as well as in the villages. If you talk specifically with reference to India, and you know that we have around 18% of the world population, and around 4% is the fresh water available in our country, and we have around 2.4% of the land area. So you can understand that the stress on the water which we have, and a large population which has to be provided the drinking water. You'll be surprised to, I think some of you may be knowing that in 1951, we had around 5,000 cubic meter of water per capita in our country, which became around 2,100 cubic meter in 1991, and 2011 it became around 1,545 cubic meter, and it is estimated that 2025 it will go down to about 1,341 cubic meter. It means we are going from the surplus to virtually to the water stress condition in the country. So and in India, around 1/6 area is drought prone, and 1/8 of the country's area is the flood prone. So these are the basic natural, what should I say, the features of the country where large population, large area also is the drought prone or the flood prone. If you see the national water policy, which talks about the first charge on the water is for the drinking purpose. So that's something very, very important to know that, I mean, the drinking water gets the first priority. Now, as you are aware that around 85% of Indian population, particularly depends on the groundwater. So groundwater is a very, very important resource available to us, and particularly, as I was telling earlier, that I was dealing with rural drinking water, and I know how much population was dependent, and largely the population is dependent on the groundwater. Even the cities also, because I have seen many cities, many district headquarters, where a lot of water still is pumped from the water table and mixed with the pipe water, or which is lifted from the river or canals, and then supplied to the population in the cities. And of course, in the villages, still the groundwater remains the main source of that. And I think some of you must be probably aware and must be keeping a track on the Central Groundwater Board, which conducts surveys of the groundwater scenario in the country once in 2 years, and which specifically indicates that which are the groundwater units which are overexploited or critical, semi-critical, or the safe. And you must be knowing about the classification of this. The overexploited are those where the water is drawn more than what is gets absorbed into the ground. And safe are those which is less than 75% of the groundwater tapping is there from that. And this critical and semi-critical is in between that. So this is the scenario in the country. But I wanted to, because this webinar is for the drinking water, and we are talking for the whole country. So you know that in South India, where particularly I have worked, we have a lot of hard rock areas. And in the North India, particularly where the alluvial soils are there, or Indo-Gangetic plain is there, we have groundwater tables are comparatively better than in the southern part of the India, where hard rock areas are there. And in the hard rock areas, as you know that there are a lot of tapping of the groundwater takes place for the irrigation purpose, and as well as for the drinking water. But majority of the irrigation demands in the villages in the hard rock areas are met by the groundwater. So this is a very, very highly competitive demand on the water. Simultaneously, why mentioning these issues are basically that I will be drawing certain conclusions on that, which will be very important for us to make the source sustainable. That's the reason I am giving these informations and all. And as you know that the water user efficiency in our country is around 38%, while in some countries like Morocco or it's around 45%, and while in case of the Japan or Israel, it goes to about 50 to 60%. So this is the scenario So where we can, basically see the how the water is used in that. Now I'm to the real issues. See, if I give the example of Andhra Pradesh, there are areas where I mostly worked in the Rayalaseema area of Andhra Pradesh, which is a very drought-prone area. I was mostly worked in Kadapa, Anantapur, that area. Rainfall is comparatively lesser than other parts of the north coastal Andhra Pradesh, where it is about more than 1,000 millimeters. So the sands in the rivers are a great source of water, drinking water, not only in the town, in the villages, but also in the towns. Like I can give the example of a town, a big town where I was working was Kurnool, where I was for a long time. And our main source of water was coming from the rivers. So in the rivers, they have the infiltration wells, and the water quality in the river sand is just like a mineral water. I used that water for a long time, and quality of water is absolutely fantastic. But what's happening is, because of huge sand mining, this water source is becoming dried up. There's a huge problems on the sand mining, and ultimately the people are losing the drinking water sources. In fact, I was once, when I was the director of groundwater of Andhra Pradesh, I got certain people and representations from a district called Mahbubnagar, where they came and said, the people came and said that a lot of people are lifting the sand, the contractors are lifting the sand, and we are losing the water sources, drinking water sources. So these are something very, very challenging and very important for us to know, and to ensure that at least our water sources, our drinking water sources are not depleted. That's the reason in Act, the AP Water, Andhra Pradesh Water, Land and Tree Act in 2002 was brought by Government of Andhra Pradesh, where there are certain rules about bringing some kind of a space between the two wells to structures of the drinking water, as well as what are the rules, regulations for mining of the sand, so that these water sources remain intact. Now, coming specifically to the issue of the drinking water, as rightly mentioned, that in the cities, the drinking water is mostly supplied by the city governments, and particularly through the pipe water supplies. Now, pipe water, as you are aware, that because in many cities, particularly, the pipes have not been replaced for a long time. There is a lot of mixing of water. Even other water is getting mixed up, and you find every time we see that a lot of cases for health, health hazards take place somewhere in the country. We keep on seeing in the newspaper that the people had developed with some gastric problems, and people have got ill, and etc. So the whole issue is basically the two waters, the drinking water and other water is also are getting mixed up. So I think something important is that the networks like your safe water networks basically are very, very important, which are supplying the water, safe water to the people. Now, if I give certain examples to you, like if we come to some of the areas in the countries where we have a lot of arsenic problem or water quality problems. We have some areas like in Rajasthan, in West Bengal, even in Assam, etc., where we have the certain areas where a lot of fluoride problem is there. Certain areas in Assam, West Bengal, and also Punjab, we have the areas where arsenic problem is there. So I was working on a project in Niti Aayog where we had started, helping the state governments to supply the drinking water to the arsenic and fluoride affected areas. Of course, other areas, some of the areas have the other water quality problems, like the problem of the iron or nitrates or salinity, etc. But particularly, we were concentrating more on fluoride and arsenic affected areas. So what we were actually trying to support the states was basically have a community water purification plants, and we had discussed with IIT, HNI, and also various other organizations who have developed a certain of the technologies where they can treat the water which is having the fluoride or the arsenic, etc., and then we were able to support to some of the state governments. So wherever these issues are there, and of course where the city governments are not able to supply the water in the required quantum, definitely the networks like yours are very, very important. I have seen myself in the state of Telangana as well as Andhra Pradesh, where the district Krishna, where I know some of the enterprises were working in the villages and supplying at least 20 liters of drinking water to each family every day. I have seen myself on that. Now, the question basically is that the role of organizations like yours, it becomes very important. If you see in the rural areas in the country, around 81% of habitation, and this must be the problem. Why I'm the rural areas is because problems are more or less same in every part of the country. Around 81% of the villages are covered fully. Covered fully means where they get around 40 liters water per capita per day. And around 3.5% of the habitations, we have around 17 lakh habitations in the country, and where, as I mentioned, 81.80 to 81% are fully covered. Fully covered, I mean 40 liters per capita per day. And around 3.5% of these habitations do have the water quality problem, and balance habitations are not fully covered. Not fully covered, I mean here is less than 40 cubic, LPCD water. Now, as in the cities, and is around 135 LPCD water, which is to be supplied. But the here basic problem comes particularly in those areas, slums, etc., where there is huge density and becomes difficult to lay the pipelines, etc. But there, in such cases, I think the community water purification plants and supply of water by the enterprise like yours becomes quite important. And particularly, I think you are in a better position to bring a lot of awareness among the people. Particularly, what I can say, the reuse and recycle of water, because ultimately there is a huge pressure in the colonies on the water. The same water used for drinking water and same water used for various other purposes. Probably there is a need for bringing a lot of awareness. Whatever we can do is that how do we bring the awareness among the people to recycle and reuse the water. That's one. Then reduction of the use of the water becomes another thing, how the people can use the water much more sparingly. Basically that becomes something very important. Another issue what I was thinking was the pricing of water is very important, because I have seen some of the city governments when they increase the prices. I'm not saying now, in fact I give the example to you about I can tell you about I think 10 to 12 years back when I was I'm talking not 12 years back, and in 2002 I'm talking about. I was in Kurnool, and it's a fairly big town in Andhra Pradesh, when the city government had increased the water rate, and that only 20 rupees increase per month. There was a huge hue and cry in the town that time. And we keep on hearing now also in many cities, whenever there is a little bit of increase in the prices, there is a hue and cry on that kind of. But this is a fact that until unless some pricing is done properly, then the quality of water supply will be affected. So I think this is something very important, pricing of water. I don't mean that a poor man should be affected on that. So there has to be a reasonable pricing, and maybe a poor man can be supplied the water at little cheaper rates. That's a matter of policy. Something it's a very important thing, kind of a thing. Another thing I would like to talk about here is basically sometimes we come across many people I have heard, I don't name, at the highest level, where they remain interested that whatever water comes in the river, we can have some hydroelectric project or etc., so that entire water is get channeled through those hydroelectric power plants so that we can produce electricity. But the important thing is hydrological needs or ecological needs of the rivers are very important also, and minimum quantum of water in the rivers should always flow. Why I'm telling that particular thing is, until unless there is a flow of water as per the ecological needs, and that particular water, even the drinking water sources are getting dried up. So these issues, though, may not be directly related to safe water networks, but these are something very important where we can bring a lot of awareness among the people. So I personally feel that the work being done by the safe water networks is something very important, a laudable effort, and you have been, I think, working in more than 17 states, and you are definitely joining hands with the government, assisting the governments basically, and filling up the gaps of the drinking water to the people. And the quality of water, as I mentioned, that I myself seen in both Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, being supplied by these safe networks are really good. And I wish the success of this webinar, as well as the success of your efforts which you have been doing in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashok. You have addressed the water in its entirety, right from source sustainability to water depletion to the blocks and the districts which are running out of groundwater and are critical. The role which NGOs and organizations, all of us have to play for safe water accessibility, availability, and safety. We have a very good network, and I'm very proud to say that today all the 15 small water enterprise practitioners who are there on the panel, they are very accomplished. They have been working for last 30 years. Most of them are working with the communities, both in the rural space and the urban space. And we would like to you to hear our views, and we will stay connected with you even post this webinar to help enable the sector.
One more thing, Anand Rudraji wanted to say something from USAID. Anandji, can you please speak?
Yeah, Dr. Jain, thank you so much for your excellent speech, as well as the words of wisdom that was shared with all the partners. Dr. Jain, I just wanted to reiterate on behalf of USAID and the SEWA team, we really appreciate this opportunity that we had. You spare the time to come and basically speak to all of us.
Minhaj, you are requested to speak about your initiative, Drink Well Systems.
Thank you, everyone. Basically, my name is Minhaj, and I run Drink Well. So we're actually based in Calcutta, and we are a technology provider primarily focused on addressing the arsenic and fluoride water crisis. So arsenic is an issue in Bangladesh as well as India, fluoride more so in India. And so we actually have a patented resin-based technology that can remove arsenic and fluoride while recovering more than 90% of the water. And we've deployed this primarily in rural areas in 6 states, mainly in Eastern India, so Assam, Bihar. And then we've slowly started to migrate more to MP, Maharashtra in the past year or so. And we actually partner with a lot of the safe water enterprises. For example, with Right Water, Abhijit Vaisi is also a fellow panelist. And what we do is we provide the technology support by the resin that we manufacture in Calcutta, as well as system design, and really giving more of the technical assistance on how to ensure the water quality is preserved. And so in light of the operating model, we actually have a lot of systems that we deploy that end up in the PHED tender system. So we don't have full visibility on the gender ratio, but what we do know is that there's a lot of work we could do. I appreciated the gender ratio call out in the text. I think it's an important point. I think in regard to COVID, so what we've primarily done is set up hand washing stations outside the ATM booths just to promote hand washing and actually give access to safe, not just water, but hygiene. In a lot of these areas, even a basic hand washing station is inaccessible to the end users. And we also set up social distancing circles. And if we can just go to the next slide, I think what we've learned is the actual ATM dispensing itself was deemed a luxury in some PHED contracts. In areas where we work, where there's a very low willingness to pay, we found that people want to opt for just tap. I think now with COVID, the contactless experience that an ATM provides, provided with the mobile money integration, even though there's a take that mobile money vendors will deduct, has value now in light of the pandemic. I think the second thing that we're understanding is due to just the changing environment with delivery and how there's more delivery being promoted, there's hopefully a chance to reduce the cost of delivering water, which is traditionally a very expensive endeavor for a safe water enterprise to undertake. So hopefully that will actually allow a trend for us to, as an enterprise, as an alliance, capitalize on. And the final thing I'll say is something that's been very much alluded to earlier with Anand's comments is with Nal Se Jal and the Jal Shakti Ministry, how can we actually align our site selection decisions upon the decisions and strategy of the center and of Niti Aayog. I think there's a lot of duplication we see when we work with different partners. And to the extent we can all have some transparency in where we're deciding to set up sites, that could really help us move forward as a, not just sector, but as a nation. Thanks.
Now request Vikas to start his video, and then he can address us all.
Sure, thanks. So good morning, all the panelists, Dr. Jain and the Safe Water Network team. My presentation is more on the pre and post-COVID era that I've spoken about. So I don't have much to show in terms of on-ground installation because I'm in the process of transitioning into setting up something of my own. Suffice it to say that, as indicates of the enterprise that I have founded, the basic focus that I and along with some of my colleagues are looking at is the decentralized water systems of the world. So it's a platform which we believe is going to rule the roost in the medium to long term. So far, there has been a healthy adversarial position between the centralized and the decentralized systems globally. And if you look at the slide right now, you'll notice that the decentralized business, which was almost at an abysmal level almost a decade ago, is today in excess of $20 billion in sheer size of business opportunity, globally that is, in which, of course, the municipal water, wastewater, followed by the industrial wastewater and drinking water stacks up in a certain proportion. Of that, the orange top end of the pyramid that you see is the one which is something which is very common and popular in India specifically, where water is dispensed through the decentralized water distribution centers across thousands of centers, be it water ATM or a community water system in India currently. So this is the stack up. Now, this is the global stack up. If you look at India specifically, I would guess and say that more than 90% of that, can you go to the previous slide, just 10 seconds? So, Poonam ji, aap piche jaye. Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm saying in the India context, about 90% of this stack up would be drinking water. So the municipal and the wastewater is still fledgling as far as the overall business opportunity is concerned, as far as India is concerned. On the next slide, if you go to the next slide, please. The next slide is what is my view of pre and post-COVID era with regard to both drinking and other water play. So if you divide the entire life cycle or phase of the post and pre and post-COVID era, there is a pre-COVID era, there is a current scenario, there's a post-COVID era. And I believe primarily it will impact three areas: supply chain, dispensation environment, and technology. On the supply chain side, because historically India in the pre-COVID area has been relying, as Dr. Jain was stating, on the centralized models, many of these have exposed the fragility of the supply chain of a centralized system, which is why many of them have broken down and they could not get revived in the current period, leading to a substantial consumer angst. My view or sense is, as I indicated on the previous slide, that will set the stage for a growth of the decentralized model, which in any case is a very comprehensive and a contained supply chain in a catchment area. So I believe supply chain will more gravitate towards the decentralized model. On the dispensation environment standpoint, the pre-COVID era assumed that water is safe, which it indeed was. However, now it has to be beyond water, because not only water, even the containers and the vessels in which water is contained or other paraphernalia around the dispensation environment will have to be cleansed. So in the post-COVID area, if I have to hazard a guess, I would say the entire environment of the ecosystem would have to be disinfected in order to meet the customer expectations. And finally, on the technology play, we all know that most of the players have been primarily growing in a manual environment of running the operation. In the current scenario where so many things have broken down in information or knowledge how to resurrect them, I believe technology play will play a major role, as is the case today that we are having this conference call over in a virtual fashion. I think technology play will come into a greater existence insofar as the water distribution and business is concerned. So those are my 2 cents. Thanks very much.
May I request Parag?
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to listen to the opening keynote speakers, both from Niti Aayog and from the USAID. I'd like to quickly talk about what we do. We are a social enterprise based in India. I personally have been working with in the water space for over almost 12 years now, and Jana Jal is about 7 years old. We've been trying to contribute significantly through our making safe water available, accessible, and affordable philosophy. And our footprint is, it has been built with the intention of sustainability. What we've been able to do is maintain the for-profit position from the very beginning, and operate with that lean and efficient format, working format, so as to be able to harness highest level of efficiencies. I'm not going into the point-wise, details stated on each slide. I request you to move to the next slide. I want to really get to the second half of this little presentation. So if you can kindly do that, ma'am. This is a footprint we have. It's easy to say pan India, but yes, it's fairly wide. It's spread across various states. We have over 700 systems which are concurrently operating. What we've been able to do is, from the very beginning, it's important for me to mention this here, is Jana Jal is we've taken a very services-driven approach right from the beginning. So ours was never driven by any hardware, any specific membrane, any particular technology. We took a technology agnostic approach towards water treatment. What we did was we realized that it was important to have technology in play to be able to manage all the systems, ideally in the real time, so as to be able to drive higher efficiencies. What we understand, and I'm sure everybody on this illustrious webinar will agree with me, is that the water sector, the biggest problem that the water sector faces is viability. And that viability is driven due to two main reasons as we see it. One is accessibility, and the other is capacity utilization. When I say accessibility, I mean not everybody around every water ATM or every water station or every water treatment plant finds it accessible. So, it's easy to carry an empty 20-liter jar while going to it, but coming back, you have to carry 20 kilos of weight. So that becomes a critical issue. And the other is, like I said, capacity utilization. Most plants are operating under capacity. So what we've done is we've developed a services approach under which we would like to harness existing capacities. So we've built an electric vehicle model for delivery of safe water around every ATM. And we've built a very high-end tech platform that collects data in the real time. So what we are proposing to all state governments, and I'd like to make this submission to NITI Aayog and to the government of India through this platform, is that it's time to aggregate, it's time to integrate all existing water treatment plants that are already erected and standing across the country, whether owned by PHED, whether corporates, whether CSR, whether state governments, whether whoever, just put all of them together, converge them into a unified technology platform, and then drive a massive water sharing economy. This last slide is what I'd like to spend some time on and talk about. I've clearly missed and I've given a skip to whatever Jana Jal has created and done, because I think everybody here is very illustrious and they've done a great deal of work themselves. It's important to understand how to harness this and really capitalize on this in the benefit of every stakeholder in the value chain. The emphasis is on, due to the current pandemic, the emphasis is on no touch. Safe water is what is very, very important. People are going to be more averse to buying that bottle of water across a shelf because somebody is going to have to hold it and hand it to them. And then these people, and every citizen has to receive it and then consume from it. So people are going to be more driven and motivated to carry their own bottles. They need refilling stations. They need reliable, like I say, I think this entire panel here, every member of this panel has been a big contributor to evangelizing the unbranded, the unpackaged branded water segment. And that is something which is very important for the government to drive. The government needs to really highlight this and make it available to people as a resource that the government is making available. End of the day, water remains a government owned, managed, and the responsibilities lie on the government. So all of us are executioners. All of us are basically people on the ground, individuals and organizations that are committing to deliver the government's vision and mission. And that is what needs to be seen and done over here. Like I said, the zero touch, that is a very key factor. Having the Arogya Setu app, allow that integration into all the mobile apps that all water services players have. So if consumers, allow an open API to be given to everybody so that everybody can interface it with their apps. Instead of having having everyone download the same app, get this app to act as a backend and be able to, create a more inclusive governance strategy. This slide mentions about the stations that were our water stations that were impacted due to this pandemic. Obviously, a lot of them were, but a lot of them were also operating. So we've delivered huge amount of drinking water during this in New Delhi, in Gujarat, and it's a very, very humbling feeling. It's a very, very gratifying feeling. We've collaborated with the railways, with corporates, with even independently. Our teams have been extremely motivated at a personal level, at an individual level, to go out and make this invaluable resource available to people. Can we move to the next slide, please? If there is one. The path to recovery. I think this is very, very important, and I think I'd like to highlight over here the last section on this slide, which is the support needed from the sector and from the government. It's very, very important that on the sector side, all of us need to come together. I don't see a lot of us really going out to build new plants one way or the other, whether it is on a procurement basis by a stakeholder or it is on a BOO basis. But what we need to do is we need to aggregate our respective infrastructure. And I request SWE, the Sevaks have done huge seva in this direction, and USAID to support this. If you can actually create an aggregation of all the infrastructure that is there and have it all work in tandem, let's use existing infrastructure. That is very, very important. And let us bring our resources together to be able to drive collective viability and feasibility and reach. As far as the government side is concerned, I dare say, and I'm going to make a strong statement here, piped water to every household, we have believed, was always a pipe dream. It was never feasible. In the current economic scenario, it is even more unfeasible. There is no capex available on any side of the world, on any side of the stakeholders, whether public or private. It's important to adopt a Har Ghar Jal approach, which is, it does not matter whether the jal reaches the households through the tap in the kitchen or at their doorstep. But as long as water can be made available to people, safe drinking water can be made available to people, it is going to be invaluable. It's also, there are some reports, as they are coming through, is that traces of COVID-19 have been found in water in France. And even the UN has now published a statement saying that water must be treated before consumption. So I really, I can see a hand up, Mr. Sevak. So
yeah.
Thank you. So I'll conclude here.
I will now request Subbu. Please, Subbu, can you speak?
Thank you so much, Sevakji. It's a great pleasure to see a lot of familiar faces and great to hear all of you. I think let me start off by telling a bit quickly about what we do. So we're one of the few players who are spread across the value chain in the water space. So we're present across the space. We're present on the rural, the semi-urban and the urban space in terms of water vending machines. We have close to around 2,000 or so machines, out of which around 1,500 are currently operational. And we work both with the government and in the private spaces. And we find some amount of difference in both of these areas. And we also work both from an EPC space as well as from space where we have put in our money, particularly in the urban spaces, in terms of setting up some of these water vending machines. Now, what we find in terms of our experience, so obviously this is an area where there is huge scope from a nation building point of view. I think 70% of India's water is believed to be contaminated and 84% of the rural households don't have access to safe drinking water. And in that space, therefore, correctly, as my previous speaker mentioned, I think the whole idea of a piped water supply in the next 5 years is definitely unrealistic and not likely to happen. Therefore, the concept of a decentralized water dispensing is something which is invaluable and is the only practical way in order to increase the coverage of water and in order to ensure that safe drinking water is available to people. Now, in the last week of March or in the beginning of April, we found ourselves in a situation where our operations were totally affected and almost all of our water vending machines were incapacitated. In certain cases because of government restrictions, and in certain cases because of our own care, in order to ensure that we are able to have our operators totally safe and we are able to follow the best practices. So we started from a zero kind of a base at the beginning of April, and gradually I'm happy to report that we've been able to build on this opportunity of the last few weeks. So we started out by looking at it as an opportunity. We said this is a great time to reflect on what we have been doing. We've been sort of running around constantly on a breakneck speed. This is a great opportunity for us to reflect on where we are standing, look at how we can improve some of the things that we are doing. If you go to the previous slide for a minute and look at what are the areas where we can develop certain systems of more organized working. We also looked at an area to invest into technology, so into areas related to pilferage control, remote monitoring, certain other technologies which are less water wasting, and tried to do some amount of testing, piloting on those in controlled areas. And looked at this as an area where we have to prepare for the post-COVID area. And if you go to the next slide, in terms of our path to recovery, I think the first and foremost importance for us, the way we see it, is to ensure that we are able to offer safety and well-being of the people who are involved in this whole process. So we touch about 3 million or so people every month as per our latest records. And we have close to around 4,000 people or so who are directly or indirectly involved from our end into this whole process at the operator or at the technician level. So the first and foremost thing is to ensure that they are following the highest protocols of safety and well-being and are not adversely affected in any manner. And that's extremely important to ensure through providing the right equipments, but also ensuring that they are trained and geared up in order to be able to do that. Then looking at all of these learnings that we have tried to capture in the last few weeks, what out of that can we implement quickly so that it does not become just something on the realm of analysis? What out of that can we implement from the point of view of increased coverage? And I think this whole sector and what we offer as a combined group is premised on the fact that we are able to provide safe drinking water more efficiently and in a more leaner manner compared to what governments or other larger corporations would be able to do. And in the post-COVID area, I think there is a need and there is probably a requirement to ensure that we become even more leaner and more efficient in whatever manner in order for us to be able to deliver more value. And one key fact of that, which has also been spoken about briefly by my previous speakers, I think most of our assets for all of us are currently not really fully monetized. I think we find that at least in our case, and that might be true for many others, still most of our plants are working at a very low capacity for what they have been designed. Very often they are working only for a few hours. Therefore, there is a lot of opportunity to look at how these assets can be used better and serve more people. And therefore, from a government investment, from a private investment, and from an operation point of view, perhaps the emphasis needs to move on to, I won't say shift, but definitely move on to not just setting up more units, but look at how distribution systems can be improved so that the existing systems can be better utilized and more population can be covered. And obviously to look at how technology can be incorporated into this scheme in order to ensure that this increased efficiency is ensured. Those are my 2 words of wisdom.
And now we will ask Mr. Anand Anil Kumar, MS Scientifics and Apple Systems.
My special thanks to the network, Mr. Ravi Sevak and Poonamji, for coordinating this webinar in the right time. Okay, as I was telling that we have been in this MS Scientific has been this field for last couple of years, and the major projects we have done is in Karnataka and Kerala, and we are on dispensing water to 30 million people. Like all the speakers who have spoken about the problems during COVID, we were also faced with a similar situation. So we have taken care that our office and back office staff are working from home, and minimal staff are kept on the ground, the operators, and that too with special permission of the government. And I would like to say that in both in Kerala and Karnataka, permission was given to run the plants. Next slide, please.
Ji.
So during this time, like many people who thought what we should do, we have established some of the new products which were required for our running a water station and also for the COVID, post-COVID, with our channel partners, especially that if you can see here in the photograph, the disinfection tunnel and the contactless sanitizer, which I believe is going to be in great demand, and also the back paper sanitizer. And we also encourage our operators' families to develop masks, stitching of masks. So we are now in a position to supply masks also. Next slide. What I suggest, like many of them said, that while we have to maintain social distancing, there's no other option, and use contactless sanitizer. And like somebody said that we can convert ATMs or ATMs into, coin operated or mobile operated. Because today with the ATWs, with the dispensing card, it may be a problem. So I suggest that we all think about a solution together and think how we can supply without ATWs being contacted. All this will also increase the cost of our working. The capital cost, we may need some support from the government, and also we may need some cross subsidy by the government. And I would like to especially emphasize on the point raised by one of the speakers, that while we all can integrate our resources which are now stressed, which are underutilized, and expect the government to come into a supporting role to help us to better utilization. But I would like to emphasize that while the government will work to integrate us, we can at least integrate ourselves and offer common services. Service is a big problem for all of us. So we can have a common service partner. We minimize the service cost for each one of us. And also we can think of bulk procurement. Like instead of each one of us procuring, we should integrate our requirements of filters and all that, and go to the suppliers and ask for a bulk price. That will also reduce the price, and the supplier also will have the benefit of volume. Somebody's. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I would now request Mr. Naveen Mathur of Maitri Aquatech to please address us.
Thank you, Sevakji. A very good afternoon to everyone. Just to give a little brief about our company, we are a Hyderabad-based social enterprise formed under the Make in India initiative, and we have developed an alternative technology which generates potable water by harvesting the humidity in the atmosphere, as a result of which we can give water on a sustainable basis even in places where there is no water available. Now, our product Meghdut has already been approved and recognized by the Ministry of Jal Shakti through the Mashelkar Committee. Can we move to the next slide? So essentially what we are doing is, as an organization, we solve both for water availability as well as contamination. I think this is in line with what Dr. Vivek was mentioning some time back in terms of looking at alternative technologies which could solve for the larger problem of water scarcity in the country. Yeah. So in terms of installations, we have essentially most of our installations are in water stressed regions. We have a number of installations in Chennai. Overall, at a company level, we have about 198 installations. We also have installations in overseas markets such as Malaysia, Madagascar, UAE, Zambia, to name a few. Yeah, can we just move ahead? So essentially, the period for lockdown has been tremendously challenging, both for organizations as well as government entities. So on one side, organizations have been trying to protect the people and trying to see that how hardships can be avoided. So what we have been done on, so essentially one thing which has been happening during this lockdown is there's been additional infrastructure which has been created in terms of hospital beds to protect vulnerable people as well as migrant workers who are at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, we've also heard of places where railway coaches have been modified to provide for additional beds. Likewise, there has been infrastructure which has been created to protect or quarantine people. So what we realize is that probably our product is ideally suited in all these scenarios. So whether it be an individual who's sitting in the comfort of their homes and wants to have access to safe potable water at all times without any external contact, without while keeping physical distancing, or whether it be in terms of organizations who are trying to build that additional capacity. Can you just please request you to please just go back on to the previous slide. So what we did was we had a major outreach program during this time. We reached out to individuals so that we could cater to their water requirements and make them water secure. Likewise, we reached out to organizations, government entities, INGOs, foundations who are working in creating additional infrastructure so that water can be supplied during the pandemic, during the lockdown and beyond that. Now, one thing what makes our technology unique is that we are also able to generate alkaline water. Now, alkaline water, as you all know, helps in building immunity. So this goes a very long way in terms of building immunity, and it's very easy to set up. So it's a completely plug and play model. You have absolutely no physical infrastructure which is required, no piping, and you can just get microfreeze water sitting in your comfort of your homes or communities. Yeah, so can we just move ahead? So that was in lockdown. So there was a lot of outreach program which was done, and post the lockdown we realized that there is going to be a new normal, keeping in mind that people would want to keep a safe distance, and so we are also trying to develop sensor-based contact delivery systems for our innovative product MakeDoot. And we are also wanting to do is develop smaller technology, smaller capacities of this of MakeDoot, so that we can also cater to people having a lesser requirement of water, and can also be probably deployed in rural areas in line with the Prime Minister's vision of Har Ghar Jal. Now, what support essentially is, one is since we are companies and technology like ours who are part of Make in India initiative and have developed an innovative technology, we would request if the government would support us in terms of having some allocation of the central budgets or the state budgets to so that there can be some amount of procurement of such kind of innovative solutions which are there, which conserve water resources. We would also would want GST to be reduced, if not abolished, for procurement of such technology. A power subsidy would help in taking these technology to rural areas and places where there is a water scarcity. And we're looking forward to working with other members of this forum so that these alternative technology can be deployed in places where there's water scarcity. So I think our technology is probably like Dr. Jain mentioned earlier. This technology is absolutely in line with what Niti Aayog had a year back. They had said that by mid of 2020, most 21 cities in India are going to be tremendously water stressed. We've already started facing cities in South India, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai have already started facing this, and this situation is only probably going to be increased in terms of water scarcity. So I would request you, Dr. Ashok Jain, as well as other members of the panel, if you could help in adopting this technology as well. It would be a tremendous support if we could get especially government support for developing this technology. Right. Thanks.
Mr. Naveen, just you talked about some technology you developed. Can you just in a minute explain it what it is? I could not really understand that.
So Ashok ji, technology बहुत basic simple principle of condensation पे work करती है. So what we do is, as we know, the atmosphere is a perennial source of water, right? So what we do is we harvest the moisture which is in the atmosphere to generate potable water. And once the water gets generated, this water, we add minerals to ensure that the water is potable. For this, we work very, very closely with IICT in Hyderabad, who's had developed the mineral technology so that the minerals can be added to the water. So the beauty of this technology, don't have water, this is the best source of water. You can, you can just install this and completely on a plug and play basis, you can do this. In fact, what we have done also in Sikandrabad station, we have Sikandrabad in fact today can boast of the first, of being the first station probably in the world, which is generating water to meet the requirements of the commuters using this technology. And that's why.
Now we request Divya from Nandi Community Water Services to speak about her work.
Nandi Water has been working for the last 10 years with the mission to save lives of underserved communities by providing access to safe drinking water in a sustainable manner. We are in 7 states, set up about 650 water centers, providing water to 7.5 lakh people every day and 50,000 school children. We also believe the most sustainable way of operating a water center is if you're able to run it, train people in the communities and then hand it back to them for them to manage it themselves. So we have had a lot of the water centers handed back that are functioning right now as micro enterprises. So given we're running very short of time, I'm going to just keep this short and simple. For us, I think, we have been, through the period of lockdown, we have been continuing to work. Major overhaul of operations has happened at our end. So the first mission was to continue to provide water to people that require it, that don't otherwise have it. But we wanted to make sure that this is being provided in a way that keeps our employees and communities safe. So like mentioned by a couple of other CEOs as well, we had facilities for sanitization, hand washing, social distancing, disinfection of the water centers, ensuring most dispensation is contactless, and wherever we had in certain specific areas, especially the red zone areas, we had also introduced ozonization so that the water gets disinfected. So this is all that we've done to ensure that the water is safe. Of course, we've done an overhaul of our operations to go completely low touch and remote, so that we are able to protect both the users as well as the people that are working with us. We have really stepped up a lot of our communication with communities, building a lot of awareness around what are the precautionary measures that need to be taken during COVID-19 specifically. And all communication has been really what has been developed by the government. And we've been mostly digital and remote in this, communication. So these are some of the ways that we have, evolved during this period, went low touch, high precautions. Post-lockdown, I think it was a great opportunity for us for many things, going digital, going low touch, building awareness, through low touch methods, and introducing huge safety measures. So we will continue all of those. And in terms of support, I think this was a great way in which, we understand what's going on across the sector. But we also know that, for raising money, this is going to be a difficult period. So maybe we could come together to be able to create an alliance to raise money. These are some ways in which I think the sector could support. And with the government, I think a lot of it has been already mentioned by others. I'll just sort of add to that to say, I think give us space for making representation. I think we could bring a lot of value beyond the pipe. So make space for the discussions around that. The second is around, we have access to a lot of communities and consumers. So you could, spread messages related to specifically health, sanitation, etc. through us. So you could use us for some of this messaging, and any guidelines additional that you think we need to take for safety, etc. Please share with us so that we continue to share them. Thank you.
Vikram Golecha is another entrepreneur who has put in his life saving into this enterprise that he is making water available.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm from Osho Water. We are an organization based out of Bangalore. And water was something which was new to us when we started this whole initiative of how can we have safe drinking water centralized, which is already done by a lot of our players here. Then we're trying to make that even furthermore, decentralizing the decentralized process. And we looked at creating these micro water ATM stations, which can be installed right inside the home, where users have a water supply coming in. So we provide our services more like much like any other water ATM provider, where it is our devices are offered on a pay-per-use model. So the company invests on the device and also takes care of the maintenance. And all the user has to do is to kind of pay money online and get water right inside the home without having to stepping out from their doorstep. What we have been able to do, I would echo with the previous speakers as well, that the real disruption of water of our technology was possible only because of intelligent blend of digital tools, using sensors in the machine to track what is happening to the device, whether it's working fine or not. And I think all those situations what we have created over the last 3 years, scenarios which we were built, I think we were able to cope up with this entire last 50, 60 days of lockdown. Next slide, please. So can I have the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. So due to the nature of our being, organized water ATM right inside the home, the previous one. Step 2. Okay. So where we have been a water ATM right inside the home, I think the disruption to our business stood next to zero. We didn't have to follow much of the new normal of sanitization, social distancing, etc. at any of our stations. And of course, with the permission from the local police authorities, our servicing team was able to attend any maintenance or service issues which are there, if at all, if any, at the customer's end. Of course, we have faced a little revenue loss for the machines which were installed in small and medium offices because offices were shut, and we had to bear that loss. But then we couldn't do any new installation as anybody else. But what the opportunity we found is that how can we combine clean energy and clean water together for our future forces, where we partnered with an organization based out of Bangalore. They used cells, the dead cells, which we probably have from those laptop batteries thrown out. And we created power banks out of it. Now our machines, if at all needed, even if there's no power, to look into that situation as well, our machines can still run continuously with the help of solar panel attached to the machine, and with this power banks that the machines can run. So moving from SDG C, I think we will be able to achieve an SDG 12 as well. What we continue to want to work is to kind of open our collaboration efforts with organizations who are either working in water quality space, who are working in designing new water technology methods. And of course, we're looking at ensuring our machines as well, which are installed in a home beyond the act of God, like floods and fires as well, so that our losses can be minimized for future if at all we. Certainly, what we believe is digital transformation is water has not happened yet, as it has happened in other industries like telecom, aviation, and so on. We believe digitization will definitely help for all of us to kind of create a good water quality map of India, where probably government is kind of struggling to, or they struggle always to kind of get a real-time water quality map built. And we probably have only once in a while surveys done to imagine the water quality. Maybe if we have, have these promoted furthermore, we can create a digital water map with all our associates put together. I'm sure most of our machines the water ATMs right now are IoT enabled. So what if we can kind of create a digital water map, a water quality map for India as well, which can be used as a common resource to the government and by fellow organizations as well. Of course, I strongly believe that water is key for our business. If we don't have water tomorrow, of course, all our businesses will get shut. So why don't we use our platforms with so many million people consuming water from our machines? If we can promote them zero cost saving water methods across our stations in the local languages possible. Thank you.
Abhijit, can you please speak now?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I'll quickly get to the topic. So can you go to we are working in this space since 2006, so it has been almost 14 years. And if you see, we have installed close to 1100 water ATMs. And there is a split, 900 in rural and 200 in urban across these 4 states. So we have chosen these 11 because these are the ones where we have paying users, but we are extensively working with almost 14 states rural drinking water departments, wherein we have installed more than 2000 units where the water is given for free, or we are doing it for the rural water supply and sanitation department. So we have a portfolio, we have a presence across India. And since you mentioned specifically about the gender ratio, one interesting thing I would like to tell is most of our ATMs were operated by men. So the gender ratio was almost equal, 0% presence of women. But in last 2 years, with our CSR partners, we have been able to create roughly 120 odd micro enterprises, which are primarily run by women self-help groups. So we have got together around 1,200 women who are running these 120 enterprises, and they are earning a good living, much better living as compared to papad and achar making through these water issues. So that's how we have been able to move on that front. So as far as technologies are concerned, so we have partnered with various organizations. Like we are working on membrane technologies. We are working on electrolytic technologies through partners like NEERI and other CSR labs. We are working on nanotechnologies through partners like Drinkwell. And we have in our installations in the most hardest of water qualities in India. We have fluoride removal plant with the highest fluoride content in West Bengal. We have RO plant in Rajasthan with TDS is as high as 17,000 and so on. Coping to, as far as COVID-19 strategies are concerned, since we are working with most of the rural water supply authorities, I would like to say they have been very cooperative in terms of issuing passes. So that's how we were able to manage some of our ATMs, to be operational during these periods. The district magistrates, the collectors, they were helping us to issue the passes in right amount of right time, and that's why we were able to keep almost 50 to 60% of our installations running. But urban stations, like we have stations in Thane, so Thane city and Mumbai is very, very, badly affected. Those were areas where we had to completely shut down our operations or operate a very, very limited operations. And the movement of goods in terms of spares and parts required for maintenance, that has also affected the operations. As far as best practices were concerned, we came out with a solution for all these our ATMs, wherein a person can produce sanitizer or disinfectant from common salt. So we are planning to give small units wherein the operator can just add salt to it, and he can switch on the unit, and in 4 hours he'll get sodium hypochlorite solution, so which he can spray and disinfect the entire station. So that is something which we have developed in the last 15 days, and we are putting and sending those to all our stations, because our stations are mostly in remote areas, so you don't get sanitizers, you don't get sodium hypochlorite available in the markets. So this solution from common salt, they can make it at their site. So this is something which this is the innovation which we have developed in this space. So apart from the gloomy sides that most of the sites were down, we would just quickly reflect on 2 positive points. One in Rajasthan, where we saw in 3 or 4 villages, the uptake of water has increased during the COVID phase. And when we spoke to villagers, they were saying, "Nahi, COVID hai, to humko abhi yahi pani pina padega." So, that is one positive, that after COVID, people will definitely be more give importance to hygiene and clean water. And second is, in last month, there has been a massive attack in Chhattisgarh due to left-wing extremism. So we have our installations in Bastar, Jagdalpur. So we're happy that, all of the CRPF battalions were deployed there, and they were able to, use and drink water through these installations. So those are the two positive things. Part to recovery, of course, I mean, the support we need from the government, working capital support and wages support. So I think yesterday the finance minister already launched that package for SME. So that will definitely help us. One specific thing I would like to mention here is the electricity cost. Most of these women entrepreneurs who are running these enterprises, so government is charging a commercial rate. So which we feel is very, I mean, for such kind of enterprises, they should at least give the rate which they're charging or which they're giving to utilities. Government can intervene for this in this specific area and charge normal electric rate as compared to a commercial rate. That would be of great help for them to be sustainable. Thank you.
Surya Narayanji, can you please speak?
Yeah. Thanks, Ravindra and Poonamji. Thanks, first of all, to Safe Water Network at USAID for hosting this exchange of ideas and giving us the opportunity to share our own journey and what we see would emerge in the post-COVID situation. So I'll just quickly move to the next slide so that we can you go to the next slide, please? So we started our the previous slide, please. Thank you. So we started our journey in 2008, pretty much similar to what Parag started, and we are operating in about 20 states currently. We have over 1,750 touch points, and we serve close to about now 700,000 on a daily basis. We started using what is called the Internet of Things even before the sort of term was coined way back in 2008, 2009. So we've been leveraging technology quite heavily. We also are very proud to say that we were the first proponents of introducing the water ATM as a concept in the country. And all our touch points today are monitored on a real-time basis, so we can track real-time data of water volume, quality, and things like that on an almost real-time basis. We also understand that there is no one size fits all in terms of how do we reach out to the people who really need these services. So we have different intervention models, and some of them are how do we reach out to schools, how do we reach out to villages, how do we reach out to urban slums. We have a very unique hub and spoke model that we designed given the constraints of the urban slums, and for which we also hold the US patent. That is something that you can see in the photograph now. We have a water vehicle. Which on a real-time basis is able to track the usage level at various ATMs and can fill it before it starts to run out of water. So that's the model that we have created, and it's completely contactless, zero touch in any movement of water from the main purifying plant to the ATM. Right? Coming to the COVID strategy specifically, previous slide, please. We were we read this maybe a week before the Janata curfew was actually called out, and we are being part of a larger foundation. So we got together, and our health, education, and Sarvajal, they got together and formed what is called an emergency response team. And we focused on these three tracks. How do I get credible, reliable information to all our employees as well as the communities that we serve? That was the first track. The second track was in terms of how do we establish health helplines? How can people seek reliable advice? So we had our Swasthya team actually manning all these kiosks. And the third was in terms of how do we make sure that my service is uninterrupted for this period. So we did a lot of community outreach programs. We developed a lot of content. We set up sanitizing stations. All our trucks, all our ATMs are completely sanitized. We have even a container sanitizing station today so that people can actually sanitize the containers that they use to carry the water. We also had a peculiar challenge because we had some legacy ATMs, particularly in Delhi, which still had a push button operation. We quickly turned around our R&D team, thanks to them. We quickly turned around the firmware, and over a period of 5 days, we actually converted the entire, I think, 20 ATMs to a completely contactless system. We were anyway digital, so we were not actually moving cash. So people had the option to pay through cashless mechanism as well. That helped because even in Bhubaneswar, where we have a dual coin plus card operated mechanism, we disabled the coin mechanism so that people could pay through Paytm and other forms of contactless card systems. We had certain challenges which I have highlighted in the previous slides, especially in the urban areas. Delhi had a lockdown. We had to convince the governments to allow us to operate this as an essential service. Luckily, both Bhubaneswar, Delhi, as well as parts of Pune, government agreed that this was an essential service. So all our people who, whether it is the driver or the operators, they were actually carrying the cards or the passes, which allowed them to operate this as an essential service. And we used to conform to the safety standards that we expected out of this. So that's what we did during the COVID situation. I'm happy to report that we did not experience any major disruptions of service. Across all our 1,800 installations, everything was running, great. And we used to be in constant communication with all our consumers. So it was very important that, we communicate with them, we understand if they are experiencing any other problem. We encourage them, we provided them with information of government health helplines, our own health helplines. If they want to seek information, we had audio messages, posters and all being sent to the field teams. So there's a lot that, we thanks to that integrated emergency response mechanism that we've set up. And we have sort of now institutionalized all of it. We have SOPs for drivers, we have SOPs for verification plants, we have SOPs for the ATMs, and even the RFID cards that the consumer carries is also sanitized. So just to make sure that the whole value chain, is thanks. Just take a minute. Yeah. Now coming to the post lockdown, I think water is going to become increasingly critical, and as Mr. Abhijit also mentioned that the volumes have substantially gone up, especially in the rural areas, and we also are experiencing steady volumes in both Delhi, Bhubaneswar, and Pune. I think this is going to become increasingly critical. I think we need to have mechanisms to expand more consumers into the same network. There are still people who might be below poverty line, things like that, who would require assistance if government can facilitate that. Sorry, just 2 seconds. The second strategy is that how do we expand more networks to reach out to more people? And the third is, and this is my proposition, is that we will seriously need to think, moving beyond drinking water, because even domestic water consumption is going to be a challenge. And given that we have a complete contactless mechanism, that all of you have already implemented in place, and we leverage the same mechanism to perhaps supply potable domestic drinking water to people. So that is my submission. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I will request Mr. H.E. Kutty.
Good afternoon. I think I will make it a very short and very crisp presentation of mine. We are the old comers in this, and I'm happy to see a huge gang around in the drinking water space. We have about 3,500 installations. I will talk extempore because of time constraints. 3,500 installations. We have a mix of corporates, we have a mix of donors, we have government. We have the advantage, we are actually into the rural space. And I would say that 90% of our water plants are in the rural areas. As far as the COVID is concerned, I would come straight to that. We are having most of our installations in the previous slide, please. Most of the if you see the map, you see most of our installations. If you see the blue ones are the places where we are present. Madhya Pradesh, we are not present. Other areas we are very much present. Green, we are moderately present. If you look at the red zone, we are in most of half of the areas we are in the COVID zone. So we had a terrible time, to be very open. We had issues of passes. We had a photograph of our operators being caned by policemen when they became hyper, whenever there was a containment area that came in. Unfortunately, now it is much strained, and also about the water demand, particularly in summer region, it is at an all-time high. So we are grappling with a lot of things as far as the COVID situation is concerned, but fairly under control. Next slide, please. So what I bring to my table with my 30 years of experience in the industry, and I started with water, that is cradle, and now I end up with water, that is grave. And in between, I was in the software industry. So 20 years in the software industry made me make some money, and then I came back to the first love I had when I was about to retire and said, let's do something back in the water industry. So we brought in a lot of IoTization in this entire paraphernalia of water. We brought in analytics in the entire paraphernalia. So that made me our life much more better in terms of ensuring whether my plants are running or not, how I could do maintenance, and how I can bring about a sea change of things. Second part of it is that we are also into Har Ghar Jal Nal Yojana. We are partnering with MS Associate. I have my senior colleague Anand Anil Kumar with me. I have Divya with me, whom we work very closely with Nandis. Of course, I have the Sevaks, who are the graceful hosts, who have been also working with us very closely. We have Bihar, as far as the COVID scenario is concerned. Ironically, it was a cakewalk for us. We had an extremely nice reception in Bihar. Though we evacuated all our employees, our local employees, our contract employees, they have all resumed jobs, and we are all guns blazing there, and we are doing very well there. There has been no interruption at all. I'm really very happy. Maybe Shaharsha, Madhepura, we are planning to install taps in 38,800 houses, and we have been going there at a very brisk pace. That's the silver lining in this entire COVID scenario. If I see the installation, these are the nano jerry cans which we promote, and I see a huge surge in demand as far as our nano jerry cans, because it is zinc oxide based. It is from our innovation labs. It costs 200 rupees. It's got a tap, and we have made various modifications to ensure that it is easy to transport now. And this is something where we have bring your own device. In IT, they say, so bring your own jerry can, fill the water and go up, making it as contactless as possible, apart from using sensors. Also ensuring that maybe we may have a hub and spoke model where we can have a Bowser which will come and distribute the water. These are some of the developments I would like to thank you very much for your time.
May I now request WHI, Madhu Krishnamurthy. Our apologies again for the delay. Madhu, to you.
No problems at all. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. Water Health has been in this business for the last 13 years, serving communities since 2006. Currently, we've got about 750 installations. We categorize that into large format and small format ones. Large format ones are about 450 or so, and about 300 of them are the small format machines, which we call the water vending machines. Currently, we serve about 7 million people here in India, and we are operational in about 11 states. As for the gender rate, we are currently at about 1:3 ratio. And this is basically a combination both of our field staff as well as our associates who are there on the ground. The good thing to note is that this particular gender ratio increases as we are in the urban areas. So in the urban sector where we currently are present, I think we have got close to about 35 to 40% females and about 60% males. So it's a very, very encouraging fact that we are moving towards that part of the gender ratio aspect. So going on to the next one, all of us got affected by COVID, and I think that's been a same story for all of us. The reason I had specifically mentioned large format machines and small format machines in my previous slide was because large format ones are ones meant for communities, and that's what a lot of the players are here are doing. And the small format ones are more in the high footfall public locations. The small format ones have been unfortunately closed since the lockdown, so that's been absolutely not dispensing any water at all. But I would like to say that the large format machines, which are about 450 in number, we have dispensed about 10 million liters of water in the last 75 days. So we, from a perspective of COVID, yes, we were affected, but I would say that effect has been about 10 to 15% in a large format machines or in the communities where we sell the maximum amount of volumes, and that has brought in a reduction in the number of customers who are coming out. But nevertheless, the good part is that we still are operational. We still are able to serve a large number of our consumers on a daily basis. This has been made possible by our field staff who had gone out and got passes for all our water health centers to be operational. We had an uptime of close to about 98% of our water health centers were open throughout the COVID period, thereby ensuring that consumers who are wanting water on a daily basis as an essential service was getting it. Can we go back to the last slide for just one more moment, please? I'm going to make one more statement. And in terms of maintenance, all of us depend on a centralized maintenance team. They weren't able to travel. So we had sent out SOPs to our operators to ensure that the basic maintenance is done so that the plant doesn't go down during this critical time. And, thereby ensuring that both the customers as well as, the company is completely sustainable. We can go on to the next slide, sir. In terms of recovery, one of the things that I've already started is that in the railway stations, given that the services have started, limited services have started, we have applied for permissions in the railway stations to start off our water vending machines. SOPs have been sent to all our field team to ensure that we revitalize these installations, because they've been shut for almost like 55 days right now. So we need to ensure that they are back to normal and they can start functioning once the clouds start coming in. So that is one. We are obviously setting up cashless transactions in many of our centers to ensure that there is no touch when it comes to currency being exchanged. There are a number of social and other digital campaigns that are being put out by our marketing team to ensure that there is customer awareness both at the center and both on other media as well. And what we are also planning to do is set up vantage points near high volume, communities where they don't need to come all the way to us to pick up the water, but they can get it at an interim location so that their convenience is also maximized. So those are some of the things that we are planning to do post-COVID lockdown being lifted. From the government sector, we obviously are expecting a lot of support. One is basically the things that we have actually extended is the GST tax exemption, and definitely, I don't think anybody else has said this, but one of the things that we would like to see is that given the need for a higher cost, given the PPEs and the other things that we need to undertake, if we could have a user fee interim increase, that will help us tide over this situation and also keep all of us afloat. I don't think we should be shy from asking for these sort of things, both at the community level as well as the level, because all we are trying to do is serve the bottom of the pyramid, and the more sustainable we are, the more easier it is to serve those underserved sections of society.
Balavikas, Mr. Shauri Reddy, may I now request you?
Yeah, thank you. This is Shauri Reddy from Balavikasa. We are very pleased to present on this platform. So we are providing community water purification projects for the last 18 years. And as of today, we have reached almost 1,150 villages across Telugu states, mainly Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and we have a few in Maharashtra. So we have actually two types of projects. One is community enterprise, and another one is a social enterprise of Balavikasa. So all these 1,122 are completely owned and managed by the community. And whereas the urban model, which is for commuters, it's not for domestic purpose, for the people who are traveling in the cities. So we have a model called Sujal 80W, and we have installed 25 kiosks in 3-4 cities in Telangana. So these are completely owned and managed by Balavikasa Social Enterprise. We don't have any systems in stations or schools. So our reach is in 4 states: Telangana, Andhra, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. And we have impacted more than 2 million people through the community water purification systems. And how we are responding during the COVID situation is, we have felt water plants could be one of the high-risk platforms to transform coronavirus. So we said, why don't we take up some preventive measures? So immediately we have called all the villages and asked them to maintain social distancing. For that, they have made round marks, at distance of 6 feet distance. So all the 1,100 villages, they have clearly marked in front of their water plants, maintaining the social distancing. And then touching the ATM machine with a smart card also could contaminate. So we banned the use of HW cards by users. So only the master card of the operator is used to dispense the water. So right now we are manually recording which member is taking water, and once the code is settled, maybe we'll collect the money or recharge the card. So as of now, only operator card is being used to prevent it. And another thing, a lot of awareness is being done with our water committee in the village. And interestingly, some our water plants are owned by the community, and many villages have profits: 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakh. One of our water plant have 17 lakh rupee net profit in their account. So villages who have profits, they came forward to contribute for the situation. So they are distributing free masks for the entire village and sanitizers to the villagers. And some villages, they are also providing groceries for the aged people, orphans, widows, or migrant labor in the villages. So these water plants became a donor to provide relief activities to the communities where they are operating. So I think these are doing in a different way. And then all the community water plants have no problem either in selling water or generating revenue. As many of our friends said, they're actually making more revenue because of summer, right? And also many people are at home. Therefore, the consumption is more now. Before they were traveling, they were in the farm, there are different places. But now, because everybody at home, the consumption increased. And also because of summer season, the consumption increased. Therefore, the community water plants have no impact. But our Sujal, which is a city commuter supplying system, there we actually stopped. We are not operating those urban water plants because many people will come from different places. There is chance of contamination. So we stopped there. And then after now we are trying to do more awareness among the operators, among the leaders, among the community to maintain the kiosk, very hygienic, social distancing. So all this will continue, and we are going to make a rule: no mask, no water in every village, and then kind of things like that. And the support we expect, if there is a government schemes which can provide masks or sanitizers in some villages, it will be something which will be useful. That's it from us.
Let me give you the perspective from Safe Water Network side. In fact, we have 330 stations, 299 rural, 31 urban. We are providing access to 1.2 million people, 26% of them who are in management jobs, operator or entrepreneurs are women. They are doing wonderful jobs, 42% consumer penetration. All of them are remote monitored, and we are impacting a lot of SDGs, as you can see below. For me, for the COVID times, we have increased our IEC activities. We have emphasized on lower use of water during the hand washing practices. We have put up hand washing practices at all our stations, social distancing, as well as we have gone digital. All the B2B payments from these stations to various people, including service providers, is now being made digital. And we are also, because of remote monitoring at each station, are able to do tele-troubleshooting. And a lot of our people are able to solve the problems of these stations very, very actively through remote monitoring. For me, a very good point is this graph. This is daily graph till yesterday's volume, as you can see. Before the lockdown, at 5 p.m., the Prime Minister announced it, and the volume doubled on 21st because people ran to get water. And on that very day, these stations, only 5 of the 330 stations are not working, which are in containment zone. Even the city ones are working in Hyderabad because they're completely automatic. They fill in the water automatically into the treated water. They are by contactless RFID cards or coins they are dispensing. So the about 30% increase was there on walk-in volumes. But let me tell you, April, we were 10% down because there was no distribution to the schools, colleges, and the people who were drinking our water. But again, in May, as you can see, there is once more a jump because of the higher seasonality. But this is daily volume. Our people, I am very grateful to my team who are competent technically, commercially, and otherwise. They are training all our people into digitizing the consumer to business. All our consumers are also now being brought to the BHIM or UPI this thing. We are also aware that our volumes will not be what they were, but we are ensuring continuity through remote service capability. We are also focusing on operator health so that they do not impact the health of the water. And we are focusing more on water quality in this. One of our partners and donors, Underwriters Laboratory, keep a very, very close vigil. We are being supported very heartily by Honeywell, who are giving all the support for COVID countering in all these stations. And we are bringing power of one, in the sense one technician can do mechanical, electrical training and servicing, which are all local. Similarly, operator is being trained on local repairs. We are also working on seeing what other things can be run on this platform and how can we increase the awareness. We are very, very grateful to all our equipment providers, especially Pentair, because as you can see, without our technician physically reaching there, each and every plant of ours is working other than the containment zone. We are really happy and very grateful. Also to Dr. Ashok Kumar, and I'll now hand over back to Poonam to sum it up, and thank you so much.
So I first of all want to say this was a very lively discussion. We heard all the small water enterprise practitioners speak about their coping strategies, their innovations, and the work they are doing to keep the water flowing in their communities. We have received many questions on the web. We will address each of these questions, but here I would just want to take one question if anyone has for Mr. Ashok Jain.
So, thank you very much. In fact, it was a very good session. I also, get to know some of the good initiatives. Of course, certain initiatives going earlier in the state where I work more in Andhra and Telangana. But only one thing I find a very good opportunity now for all the entrepreneurs in this sector. So I think Dr. Parag Agarwal mentioned a point, and I think it's a very genuine point. What he mentioned was that now people will prefer to carry their water bottle rather than purchasing the water from the trains or from the stations or the other places because of the fear of, I think there's some disturbance coming. I think some disturbance coming. So the people will be, afraid of, purchasing the water bottles by virtue of the fear of the COVID infection. So I think this can provide a tremendous opportunity now to these water networks, particularly, if we have the water filling stations at various places where there is a congregation of the people, where a lot of people do visit, and certainly they would prefer to have that water which is having no touch rather than purchasing the water bottles because COVID is going to be for some time. It's not the thing which will stay, it will go in a day or two. But here, what I was personally feeling was, I think, like I saw one presentation, I can give a specific example. Mr. Kuti, H.E. Kuti, he had shown a lot of nano water jerry cans. So my only hunch is that the people will have some kind of a reservations if we start supplying the water in some jerry cans, etc. Whether the carriers of those jerry cans are free from the COVID. Like we heard in the past in the television, etc. The suppliers of the food who are going to the various houses to supply the fast food or anything, they were also found infected. So that kind of a fear among the community and the people are there, that the persons who are carrying it. So the most important thing what some of the the speakers had mentioned, like particularly like Nani Foundation, etc., where they said that this was 100, whatever water was supplied was 100% touch free. There was no touch at all. So I think this kind of a a confidence is to be definitely brought among the community and the people whom we are supplying the water, that the water being supplied to them is 100% touch free, so that they won't have those things in the mind. Then the two more points I just wanted to say. One of our speaker mentioned about, I can tell you, Mr. Abhijit Gan, what he has mentioned about the electric supply being charged at the commercial rate by some of the self-help who are running the water plant. What I was personally feeling was that now, since there is a huge, promotion of the solar power by the government, and I know when working on the community water purification plants for the arsenic as well as from the fluoride affected in the villages. So in fact, a lot of plants were available which were being, basically operated. And some of the speakers have also mentioned the solar energy. Probably it would be nice to go for solar energy rather than going for the usual, electricity. And the another point I thought again on the top of Mr. Abhijit Gan, I wanted to say that he had mentioned about the use of the membrane technology for the fluoride and arsenic. Absolutely, there's no problem on that. I have also, basically had a lot of discussion in the past on this technology. Only thing I had one doubt on that, and probably he must be also knowing about it and must be taking care of, is then when you use the membrane technology, the refuse, from the, particularly the fluoride affected water comes. How do we dispose that refuse? Because ultimately, if it is not disposed properly, or even from the arsenic areas, then again the same thing will get mixed to the another water which comes from the groundwater, other source of water. I'm not saying that they have not taken care of this thing, but I just wanted to have my certain observations on this entire thing. And whole webinar has been extremely actually useful, very educative, and particularly the people have mentioned about their their entrepreneurship and the service, particularly during the COVID time, they have provided to the people. So in the end, I will just again sum up with only one line, saying that probably the COVID has given an opportunity for our entrepreneurs to go much more aggressively on this, because the people will definitely prefer to have the water from the filling stations rather than purchasing the water. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So on behalf of SEWA, the Small Water Enterprise Alliance, I would like to thank Dr. Ashok Jain, Mr. Anand Rudra, our donors Honeywell and Pentair, all our very esteemed and illustrious panelists and the participants. Thank you very much for being with us.